so I don't have duplicate sounds. Okay, get rid of this baby. Okay. All right. I'm not as good at this as Skip is, so I'm learning. Okay, well, one thing you said last time, Tim, that really kind of struck me after we talked. I always usually have these flashbacks. I never can say anything,
Sure, at the time.
when I'm talking. Yeah,
Right. You
I
always think of your best clips afterwards.
yes. And anyway, one of the things you said was that the numinous is oh wait, here's Charles. Okay. Hi, Charles. Hi, we're just getting started here. Now, I was just going to quickly, I think that the outline of this meeting is, I thought we'd talk about the Great Mother a little bit before we go into any more conversations. And I just wanted to mention to Tim that there was something he said last time that really struck me. Is the aspect of emotion in the spiritual process. Let's put it that way. And one thing Jung says is that there are two aspects to a symbol. One is the conceptual, which has to do with form. And the other one is the emotional, which has to do with the numinosity, or the fact that it beckons to us. So you have, on the one hand, you have the form of the symbol, whatever it is. I mean, even if it's an artwork or some type of a symbol that has been created, in the third place, by the two opposites, that can't unite, yet only in a symbol. In alchemy, the adept and the inner voice he's communicating with can only meet in the stone, which is really this temple that the ego builds to have leaves on both sides of his tree. But what Tim was saying was about the emotional aspect of art, the emotional aspect of what Miles was talking about, as far as music being the bridge to the unknown, and it certainly is. I mean, what other purpose would music have, other than it's this strange thing, like poetry is, that it has a bridge to something, and what does it have this bridge to? It has this bridge to this, particularly in haiku, I mean, what is the purpose of haiku? It's actually to take you out of ordinary reality. And this is what, you're trying to do in inner dialogues and in vision and in art and in music, is you really are trying to leave the ordinary world. Not leave it, but at least transcend it and participate in another world, which is real and is there. But how do you participate in it? You can do it, and again, the symbol and the other thing about this concept, this is from Jung in Ion, by the way, that the symbol has two forms. One is the conceptual, which creates the form of the symbol. The other is the numinous, or the emotional aspect, which has to do with its numinous character of the form of the symbol. So the numinous character of the music, or the numinous character of the artwork. The artwork has form, the music has form. The emotional aspect of it is how it beckons us. And where it's beckoning us to is a very interesting question, But anyway,
It's
so I
mentioned.
thought, go ahead. Did you, Tim? What do you have to say about that?
Well, this whole
Indy, shush.
arena is absolutely fascinating to me. And one thing that it's spawned in my world is, for years and years, I've taught this course on figure drawing. And in my world, because of the influence of Jung and particularly alchemy, I've been using this new approach to figure drawing that I've never even heard of before, but to me has been very, very transformative for all of these ideas that, in fact, you're talking about. And this is a really great example of that. So this last week, I started a class with a few students that I was pretty sure were going to drop out after the first class because it's so esoteric. You know, what I've run into before is people say, "Oh, why don't you just shut up and do your art?" But for me, in this particular form of encountering a nude with your drawing pad, which is your expressive self, it opens up this world that for me is almost unreachable in any other way. So it's almost like going into psychotherapy, because the model is not only a very interesting and beautiful form, but it's also a mirror that allows you to see yourself in a way that you cannot see without that mirror. Just like in any other symbolic form, like an icon or a dream or anything else like that. And so I've been trying to simplify this concept down into some basic ideas that it's easier for people to encounter who don't have any experience with Jung or with any kind of internal focus. Unfortunately, everybody who came was really into it, and so I think it's going to work. But this idea of the conceptual and the emotional is helpful for me, because that's one thing I can point out, is that the figure is not only a form, it's also a symbol. And that symbol can be apprehended in a cognitive way. For instance, thinking about how this person represents not only an authentic human being, but also all of these associations that we project into the body. But then there's also the emotional component of what is it that's going to draw you. And, I think of the Eros and Thanatos scale. We are drawn toward the figure with Eros. We are repelled by Thanatos. And each of those is a key by which we can unlock part of ourselves that's invisible through the figure.
Yeah. Well, that and one of the things that you're saying there is, of course, we're talking about any symbol or any dream or any fairy tale always possesses all four functions. So this is just my own theory, but what Jung says is the conceptual aspect of the symbol is its form, and which I would say the logos aspect possibly would be another way of putting it. The logos aspect of the symbol is form, and and I'm not sure about that, because I might be getting a little off on that. But the eros aspect, or the emotional aspect, is its numinous character, which to me, this is my own speculation, is that the emotional aspect of the symbol is feeling and intuition, and the conceptual aspect is thinking and sensation that creates the form. In other words, the ego is alert and conscious as it creates the form. It uses sensation, the what it is creating the form with, um, to create the form. This, after it has created the form, the observer is feeling and intuitive. What the intuitive says, where does this come from? What is it referencing? Where is its referent? What is this referring to? And Jung says, if you can say what it's referring to, then it's no longer a symbol. It's become a sort of a dead fact, but it always has to be something that expresses the unknown. So
on the tail of that, sensing is my inferior function.
Mhm.
So can you talk about what question the sensing function asks in that regard?
Well, the sensing wants to know, by the way, sensing is my inferior function too, and I bet it's probably Charles as well, but I don't know. But sensation has to do with tasting it, feeling it, seeing it, anything to do with the perceptual organs of our body, feeling. Now, this is something that comes up in active imagination too with me, is the what the Great Mother and the anima have told me, is that my bridge to the unknown is nature. It is the earth, its rootedness. I had this wonderful vision, I just said, I'm gonna just unload everything to the Great Mother. So I go down to her. I meet her in this alpine field filled with flowers and bees, and I start to talk to her about what is it I need to do. Suddenly, I feel roots going into the earth. I feel branches going up into the sky, and I feel the wind moving the branches. And as it was moving, I was moving back and forth, but I could feel the rootedness. I could feel the trunk, and I could feel the swaying breeze. Now, you often see an inverted tree, one where its roots are up in heaven, coming down, and the branches are going out. I mean, you don't often see it, but that's been it. But see, that's not the tree I need. That's not the tree as the one whose sensation function is his inferior function. Mine needs to be rooted in the earth. It needs to draw up the nutrients of the chthonic world, of the nature world. And I thought that one of the things I wanted to do today is, before we just start a couple dialogues, is the image of the Great Mother is so rich. And there's a guy named Eric Neumann who has written a little bit about the Great Mother, and I thought we'd just get a little bit of an introduction to it, and talking about nature. Here's I was just going to give you a positive and a negative version of the Great Mother, and here's the positive aspect, talking about nature, talking about the inferior function of sensation. The highest and most essential mysteries of the feminine are symbolized by the earth and its transformation. The phenomena of growth unfolds in such a wealth of colors and forms that we are still overwhelmed by the archetypal noumen of vegetation. That's the phenomenon of growth that unfolds in the wealth of colors and forms. Although today its effect on us is more aesthetic than sacral. That's interesting. In perpetual transformation, the humble rotting seed lengthens into stalk and sprouting leaves. Long stem grows into dense bud, whence the blossom bursts forth in all its diversity and color. And this transformation of form and color, in which the colorless seed unfolds into the green and gold of leaves, and thence into the radiant colors of the flower, culminates in the reversal by their scented fragility of the blossom becomes concentrated, mature fruit. Now, this is all wonderful sensation images, uh, again, with its infinite variety of form, color, consistency, taste, and smell. Okay, now this is nature. This is the Great Mother's aspect as the vegetative world. This mysterious process begins under the earth and is completed with the help of water in the air, the fire of the sun, photosynthesis, and it is subject to the influence of the invisible forces that early man experienced in the earth and the water, in the heavenly powers of the night and day, in the stars, the moon, the sun, and their seasonal changes. Man is bathed in this abundance of vegetative life in the forest and steppe, in mountain and valley. Everywhere it grows, roots and tubers under the earth, a sea of fruit on trees, attainable and unattainable, herbs and berries, nuts and mushrooms, leaves and grains, in field and forest. And this primordial world is also the world of the great round of birth and death, growth and decay. And the Great Mother, she's the protectress, the good mother, who feeds man with fruits and tubers and grains, but also poisons him and lets him hunger and thirst in times of drought when she withdraws from living things. And then he says, this is just a quick little finish to it. In the primordial world of vegetation, dependent on it and hidden in it, lives the animal world, bringing danger and salvation. Under the ground, the snakes and worms, uncanny and dangerous. In the water, fishes, reptiles, and aquatic monsters, birds flying through the air, and beasts scurrying over the earth, roaring and hissing, milk-giving and voracious. The animals fill the vegetative world, nestling in it like birds in a tree. And this world, too, is in transformation, bursting eggs, crawling young, corpses decomposing into the earth, and life arising from swamp and muck. Everywhere, mothers and suckling cubs being born, growing, changing, devouring and devoured, killing and dying. But all this destroying, wild, terrifying animal world is overshadowed by the Great Mother as the great world tree, which shelters, protects, nourishes this animal world to which man feels he belongs. Mysterious in its truthfulness, the myth makes the vegetative world engender the animal world and also the world of men, which thus appears merely as part of the world tree of all living things. Now, the aspect of that is what is this sensation function, and what is the Great Mother? And you listen to all of this, and you suddenly realize this is a strange universe we live in. This is a very strange universe. This is what I'm thinking when I'm going through. God always speaks mythologically, and the Great Mother is really the source of the images, which we'll learn in a second if we go through this Great Mother thing, where the Father comes in very late, but this is the realm in which we're dealing. This is where we came from, our source. Where did we come from?
One thing that occurs to me listening to you read that is all of those sensation functions are very much rejected in social space. If you were having a social interaction and you wanted to smell somebody, that would be a total violation. And there are plenty of indigenous cultures in which this is exactly part of their everyday life. And yet we get into this kind of strict Puritan Northern European culture, and all of those things are off the table.
We're impoverished.
Impoverished, right.
We are really impoverished. Because, our day used to be ruled by the, you can imagine living without electric lights. When the sun goes down, everything becomes very mysterious, and you're only light is the moon, which at that point you thought was its own light. You know, it's this strange silvery light. And why is it, where did it come from? And what does it have to say to us? And it wanes and waxes, you know, and then you have the stars and this strange mystery of the night, and then the mystery of the morning. And then you have the mystery of, uh, you know, well, you know, dawn consciousness and evening consciousness. What do those mean? And then the mystery of the seasons, you know, spring, what goes on in the fall and winter where everything dies and goes through. So I mean, this was something that shaped us, you know, and also shaped not just our bodies but the psyche itself. And all of these images are speaking to us. And you know, everyone wants to simplify. I mean, this is something that, you know, you do in Zen. You know, it's a straight up the mountain. You don't take the snake path, the Taoist snake path. But I mean, I think that one of the things that Jung told Agnella Yaffe when they were doing memories, dreams, and reflections, he says, what really moves me is what grips me, he says, what seizes me is that I want to understand, you know, and what we're understanding is something pretty amazing, I'll tell you. I mean, and I just thought before, you know, now first we got a little bit of a color of who the Great Mother is. Now, she's actually exists before the unconscious, really. I mean, the unconscious is at least for man, which is the non-ego. You know, conscious is non-ego. You got ego and non-ego. Well, the Great Mother existed before there were either ego or non-ego, because there was no such, you know, differentiation when she was creating all this life, you know. And the God comes up later, you know, as the star of man, you know. And one of the things we're going to find with Anna Marzula is a real alchemical idea that her role is to create the divine child. That's what it culminates in. So, in other words, that her role is to create the God. Now, this is an alchemical thing, and what really you're creating the God. It's not the ego creating the God, but the non-ego, this unknown ancestral inheritance of man, which is incredibly mysterious yet incredibly rich. And this ego consciousness in time and space are to come together, and through their union create a residence for themselves to live in which the divine child, or the really would be personality number two, which is the divine child. Oh, here's Miles is here. Well, great. Miles is here. How are you doing, Miles?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Oh, no problemo. Say, well, what we were going to do, I thought, was just quickly. Let's just. I just wanted to do a kind of a review of who the Great Mother is. You know, this image of the Great Mother, and Neumann does a beautiful job on this, and I think this is going to really put into focus the archetypal feminine is really what it's called, you know. Now, here's his diagram, and he apologizes for it. You know, he says, this is not supposed to be a dead thing. It's supposed to be an attempt to translate the numinous dynamics of this universe we live in through a quasi-visual thing. Now, what we see here is there's an A axis, you know, which has A positive and A negative. Now, that's the anima, okay? The positive anima and the negative anima. The positive anima is the inspirational seer. She's the one who you would find in the oracle at Delphi, or as an illusion in the Eleusinian temples. And then the negative anima is the it's a strange type of unconsciousness, but it's a regressive unconsciousness where you're really conscious, but let's just do it this way. The anima, the positive anima, is the spiritual psychic life, which is in full flower. The negative anima is the I might be able to make that image a little bigger, but the negative anima is spiritual psychic death. Okay, then the other access is the Great Mother. Now, the Great Mother existed before consciousness, and she is the image of she's a corporeal. I mean, she has to do with actual bodies, so she's has to do with the birth and death, with birth and death. And she is the positive is I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to try to get this in a little better so you can see a little better. Oop. Okay, where am I? Okay. Well, anyway, okay, there, good. It went away. All right. I'll try again. Okay. And anyway, we're going to go through these, this thing, and I think we're going to learn a lot, not just about the Great Mother and the anima, but what we really want to learn about is the anima and the animus, the Great Mother, the shadow. I mean, those are and what the unconscious is, and what is the paternal aspect as well. I tried to make this a little bigger. Let's see if it works. There we go. It's a little bigger. Anyway, okay, so there's 2 axes and 4 circles. The first circle is the containing circle. That is the circle of the womb, and the mother is the elemental. The mother axis, the good mother and the terrible mother, are the elementary character of the feminine. So I mean, this is the one that really generates life and how we've experienced her. And the central circle in the center is the elementary character of the feminine. It's maternal, and in the center, it predominates over the transformative. And this is really all of our psychological problems have to do with leaving that containing area. The vessel, is leaning. So there's 2 aspects of the containing vessel. One is bearing and releasing, bearing the child and then releasing it into the world. The other one, the negative mother, is in the containing, is holding these beings fast, not letting them out of the womb, fixating them there and ensnaring them. And she's dangerous and deadly, this whole archetype is very ambivalent too. You're not going to find anything in here about good and evil. What you're going to find in here is just different poles of the archetypal feminine. Bearing and releasing is this vegetative symbol. This is the plants bursting out of the womb of the darkness of earth and see the light of the world. So release, bearing and releasing. Releasing is from darkness to light. It's the way of life, the way of consciousness, darkness to light. All these growth symbols are linked with consciousness. The feminine releases what is contained in it to life and light. Now that's the good mother. That's the one who is going to be the M plus in the upper left-hand corner. Now she releases into the world everything that aspires to independence and freedom. Now that's the individuated person. The person who achieves individuation is the one who aspires to independence and freedom. Now the fixation, not releasing. Now this is what I'd say too about these. The etymology of of words. Words are living beings, and they all express something, and everyone's a little mini god, and where did it come from, and what is it referring to, So anyway, what we're doing here is a little bit of etymology of the archetype of the feminine. What does this all mean? So then the negative, the holding fast, the fixating is captivity, imprisonment, restricting, hostile, ensnaring, aggressive. It's the net, the noose, the spider, and the octopus, the one that holds with its ensnaring arms, and it's where the independence which we aspire to is endangered. And then just a little bit more about animus axis A. This is now where this is the physical release into life and also the dissolving into death. The anima is more the transformational. She has to do with the transformational aspect of the archetype of the feminine. And she's also the bridge to the unconscious, which again is after the mother. The mother was here before consciousness was. So anyway, normally what happens with the mother is this myth of or this image of rejection, and which is birth trauma. She does this to get rid of her grown babies, especially the males. She rejects you, she withholds her love, and she gets you out of the container. And so anytime you experience deprivation or withdrawal of love, say like you ask a girl out and she says, no, I don't want to go out with you. I mean, you're experiencing this feeling of you're experiencing at that moment is the birth trauma. I mean, you're experiencing the withdrawal of love, this rejection, which has to do with the Great Mother. She's not only is the way of life, but she's the way of death. She's the womb and the tomb. And now the escape from the Great Mother, the leaving of the containment, is now experienced by loneliness or individuation. So when you've left the container that was this nourishing, giving region, now you're experiencing either loneliness or individuation. So you're either going to feel despair, hopelessness, and no one now nourishes me or protects me. Everything okay? Yeah, just leave it there, Tanner. Or do you need anything?
I'm not done.
Oh, okay. Well, just do whatever you need to do.
All right.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
So,
All right. Okay.
for a second,
Yes.
are you, if I'm understanding you, so you have this option of loneliness and another option of individuation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Misery or exile, living in the desert. The desert years, the wandering in the desert for 40 years. I mean,
So this would be the difference between loneliness and solitude.
yes. Well, let's say the misery and the exile aspect. First of all, when you leave Egypt, there's a birth trauma. You know, after you cross the Red Sea, when you leave Eden, there's a sense of being abandoned. You know, and being rejected. So there's two responses. One is to live in misery and exile, and the other one is to reconnect with that source now, but not before you were connected with it through what they call a participation mystique, you know, which is you're totally contained in it. So the miracle of ego consciousness is that you leave Eden, that you leave Egypt, that you experience the birth trauma, you know, and now you're not contained in the mother world anymore. But this involves rejection and withdrawal of love. And how do you respond to it? I mean, this is really the cause of all neurotic aspects. Is how do we, you know, what we need to do is aspire to independence and freedom, you know, and really this is going to be if we recognize that the ego first, you know, there is a transition of the ego emerging into the world and becoming independent. And there's a biological aspect of this too, is that you are, you know, you go through infancy, puberty, adulthood, where you then marry, then you have a family, and then your family grows up. And now what do? Well, now that was your preparation, okay? And that's what Jung says, the first 40 years are just a preparation for the spiritual life. Well, anyway, so now is the time you look back, okay, and reconnect. Now, see, that first 40 years was this, you know, sort of a preparation or training of the ego, so now it can become a vehicle. So anyway, then we move on to the, you know, the birth. Birth is the release into life, rejection from the uterine paradise, and consciousness, which we're now experiencing after this birth trauma, is development towards light, but expulsion from the nocturnal bliss in unconsciousness. You know, and there's where there's this withdrawal of love. Once you've left the nocturnal bliss, you're on your own, you know, baby, you know. So there's this withdrawal of love, and this actually is a instrument of power that the feminine has. She can withdraw her love. And that's her means of perpetuating your existence in the containing and not transforming. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing about the mother, and in all fairy tales. With the right hand, she helps, and with the left hand, she inhibits. You know, so she's this very ambivalent character. I mean, she's both helping and restricting. You know, and again, we're just talking about who the great mother is. Now, we might want to just go through the circles real quick, and everybody feel free to jump in at any time, because
I just wanted to make one small comment.
yes,
So you said, like, I don't know, symbolically or mythologically speaking, the mother helps with the right hand and impairs or whatever with the left.
yes,
In ancient Egypt, all their iconography and I guess reliefs or whatever, all their images depicted basically the right hand giving and the left hand receiving.
mm-hmm.
Or you give with, in ancient Egypt, you gave with the right hand, you took with the left hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, the right hand is really, I mean, it's ambivalent as well, because it, you know, is moving away from the mother. And the left hand is also ambivalent as well, is because it's the return to the mother. You know, so they're both, the right hand has two, positive and negative, as well as the left hand. But, you know, there's this one other thing that I might introduce a little bit later, is this one woman has a wishbone, and she pulls it, you know, and the right hand is shorter than the left. The left hand was the one that had the stem on it, of the Y, So the left hand is really the original, primordial hand. Yet we can't stay in the left hand either. We have to be balanced. We have to have a right hand and a left hand. So I mean, there's this aspect of not one, and I'll tell you something. This is also not static. This round is happening in the psyche all the time. We're always going from a rebirth to a emergence to a growth and a death of that attitude, and then another rebirth. So we're experiencing this rebirth and emergence and birth trauma, and then growing all the time. I mean, the psyche is experiencing this, and this was very informative to me about the a lot of our emotions have to do with what you could call a birth trauma. It is leaving Eden. We leave Eden a lot of times, leaving paradise, leaving this place where we are experiencing nocturnal bliss to, breaking our feet on dry stones,
It makes me think of I wonder how much of that is behind Make America Great Again.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of longing for something that we lost.
Yes, I mean, there's always this. Now, see, when you're longing for Eden, when you're longing to return to Eden, you're really longing again for the mother womb. I mean, you want to return to this place where everything was perfect, everything was fine, all my needs were taken care of, But then I go out into the world, and pretty soon I experience, eventually, I experience a certain amount of growth while I left Eden. You don't grow in Eden, but when you leave Eden is when you experience growth. This is that circumambulation. But at some point, your symbols are going to become dry, and you have to return. Well, let me just quick go through the circles real quick. See, the first symbol is of transformation. Now this is on the anima. You can see there's the M. The mystery of the terrible mother is the death mysteries, and this would be Isis and Hecate and Gorgon and Kali. And then the mysteries of the good mother are the vegetation mysteries, and this would be Demeter and Isis, And then the as far as the anima is concerned, the positive pole of the anima is the Virgin Mary, Sophia, the Muses. This is the inspiration mystery. See, there's 4 mysteries. And then the negative anima is the mysteries of drunkenness, ecstasy, madness, impotence, stupor, and that would be of Lilith, the young witch. See, the terrible mother is the old witch, and the negative anima is the young witch. So the terrible mother, or the old witch, is the one that causes physical death, and the young witch is the one that causes psychic and spiritual death. And so then you move out and develop. And if we follow just the line of the anima, after you've reached the transformation, it is this aspect of the giving, rather than, I mean, if you look at the 4 things surrounding the containing circle, the good mother's image is bearing and releasing, and the bad mother's is holding fast, fixating, and snaring. The good anima is at the first, as she leaves the first circle, is giving, and the bad anima's rejection and deprivation. Then you move to the level of development, and that's where you, for the good anima, the good mother, you're now becoming an adult, you're flowering, you're going for life. If you're transforming on the path of the negative mother, you're being rendered, hacked into pieces, and you're being devoured, and it's a diminution. And
Wait,
yes,
let's wind back a little bit. I'm suddenly stuck on this idea of sublimation.
yes,
And thinking back again to the difference between intuition and sensing, it feels to me as though sublimation is a rejection of the sensual.
mm-hmm.
Am I understanding that right?
Well, the sublimation is basically is becoming leaving the body. You know, it's leaving the body. So, in other words, now you're transforming into a something that is independent of the body. And if you look at the opposite, that's dissolution. You know, so in the negative anima, instead of
That would be estrangement from the body. Dissolution.
it can be estrangement, but there's also a positive aspect to it. You know, the positive aspect to it is that is more consciousness. You know, of not being in the participation mystique of the containing circle. You know, so that there is a negative and a positive aspect of sublimation. There's also a negative and positive aspect of dissolution. You know, and so there is, what you're saying is exactly true, but it's also has a spectrum. You know, so there's one spectrum you're describing, and there's another spectrum.
So let me just see if I'm getting this right. So the positive aspect of dissolution would be dissolving the boundaries of your body so that you incorporate more of nature in your sensuous experience.
Yes, I would say that's true. You know, there's alchemical saying dissolve and coagulate. You know, and James Hillman would always stress this: dissolve all certainties and fixities. You know, the only way that you can, you go to the rock on which the alchemical stone has its foundation is through dissolution. Now that would be the positive aspect, is that you dissolve all fixities and certainties. Well, the sublimation aspect is kind of developing something that could later become a fixity and a certainty. I mean, it's developing the conceptual. Really, I think it is an aspect of now. Everything we're talking about here, we're actually going to reach the masculine spirit pretty soon, but we haven't reached it yet. So we're always in these until we get to the fourth circle. We're talking about what's the feminine spirit, which is the lumen natura. You know, this is the spirit of nature. This is a spirit which is still rooted to life, you know, and to the unconscious, where the masculine spirit is very detached from the earth and detached from the body and detached from the light of nature. It's a different type of spirit, and we will reach that, and we'll find out maybe a little hint about what its purpose is. But you know, I don't say I know it, but I guess I got a little hint about it. Okay, so anyway, so then that's the second circle is really leaving the containing vessel completely. Now, the third circle is where we're going to be moving towards spiritual transformation, you know, and this is, you know, there's the, in spiritual transformation, there's two aspects of spiritual transformation. There's one of the psychic spiritual, which is the anima axis, and then there's one of a more physical type of rebirth on the mother. Now, I'm not saying I understand all this myself yet, but you have to study it, I think. But anyway, this is the spiritual transformation is the highest level of the feminine spirit. You know, at this point, you really are reaching, you know, the birth of the individuated being. You know, the transformation of consciousness into. You've left the container of the mother. You went through the transformation of being a you know, some kind of embryonic being in the container, either psychically or physically, to becoming an adult. Well, now that you're adult, you need to cross the third circle, and that is the one of spiritual transformation. You know, and it's really is involved with vision, with seeing on the positive side, and on the negative side of the anima, it's with intoxication and some type of a development that leads to more drunkenness. In other words, it's spiritual or psychic death, where the mother line leads to the vegetative mysteries and to the death mysteries. The anima leads to the inspiration mysteries. These are mysteries of vision and seeing. These would be the shamanic aspects, and the drunkenness would be you know, in other words, psychic death. The other one's physical death, psychic death for the anima, physical death for the mother, and for the good mother, it's the full flower, the vegetative mystery. You know, I read that at the beginning about all of these seeds turning into these green leaves that bud and turn into flowers, and then for the good anima, it's the inspiration mysteries. So then you reach the fourth circle. Well, what happens at the fourth circle? I mean, now the one who presides over this round is Hermes or Dionysus. You know, I mean, they are very they're the son of the mother. Okay, they're the son of the mother. Yet now they are the bridge to the outer world. You know, so. So then you get outside the fourth circle, and as far as the archetypal feminine is concerned, you're now in. There is no more distinctions. So now you've entered. We won't go into this, but you've entered the father world. Okay, the father world exists outside of this. This is all has to do with the spirit of nature. So, but the father world is this detached kind of just pure light, you know, I mean, at least in its positive aspect. But it doesn't really have access to the unconscious. And the unconscious is the world, the rich world of images. You know, all images come from the depths and the water and the underground world. And this is the mother. So she's sending us these images. But you know, this differentiating light of the father world, you know, which creates thoughts, abstract, you know, is the solar thing. It differentiates and you know, allows this other type of ego to form of that's outside of nature. You know, so the father world is really a development of consciousness that doesn't have access to these sources that are just wonderful. You know, the containing womb, the transformation to an adult, the spiritual transformation of this shamanic seeing world. The prophetic world, the world of prophecy, is feminine. It is not masculine, despite what we hear about the prophets in Israel. You know, the world of the prophetic has always had to do with the feminine. Okay, so then now for a male being who sort of has experienced a little bit of this, and he reaches the fourth circle, now his only way back is through the anima. Now the woman has to use the animus to get back, and that's a little bit different. But you know, I just found I'll just we can go into the Animarjula a second, but I just thought I'd read this little really interesting that, you know, this one woman that get rid of this thing. Tired of looking at it. But anyway, sorry to
Before
bore
you move on, though,
Yeah.
sorry if you have to repeat, but pardon me. Who produced that drawing, the diagram, and when does it date to?
Well, it's Eric Neumann, who was a Jungian analyst who lived in Tel Aviv, and he was, you know, whenever he came to the Iranos conferences, you know, when he and Jung would speak, everybody just sat around in rapt attention to listen to him, because he was such a wonderful, you know, his great book was The Origins and Histories of Consciousness. This one was called The Great Mother.
And I'm wondering how far back is he? What are his original
40s.
sources? I wondered, in which he
40s and early
generates
50s.
this.
Yeah, it'd be the 40s and the early 50s.
It's just because I just shared in the chat 2 documentaries that I found fascinating. One is The Goddess Remembered,
Mm-hmm.
and then the second one is The Burning Times.
Mm-hmm.
And The Goddess Remembered is all about, you know, a lot of really what you're telling us here, or Neumann told us. And then The Burning Times is about how in the period of the 15th century, I guess, there were possibly 9 million women, primarily women, killed, like burned at the stake for being witches. And I was just shocked to hear that statistic. And then that morphed into a broader inquisition. But it was this pursuit of witches. It was like a moment of insanity, obviously, and just shocking that, you know, it was actually sanctioned by Christianity at the time, and in fact, there's a reference to a pope and his instructions about how to deal with witches. So anyway, just a horrible situation, and it's only about 300 years old. Around the ancient city of Trier, which is in Germany now, there were communities around that area where the entire community was decimated, like it was a femicide, I suppose you could say. So that's where I'm wondering, you know, just how ancient Neumann is going back to get some of this information. And
well, you know, Christianity in Europe, you know, I mean, Europe is still was still a very pagan place, and you know, really, as far as pagan means it means the indigenous informing wisdom. Really, you can give it I think witch is a demonizing term for someone who has access to the unconscious. She's a seer or a prophetess, you know, and that wasn't gone at that time. And of course, you know, actually, and if you really believe in the imaginal world, you know, I mean, which is this world of where you can give a name and a face to figures who exist within, and some you know, as Carlos Castaneda tells us, exists without as well. You know, I mean, this is what's called the ally, and you know, this is being somewhat similar to an angel, you know, but anyway, you can these entities are what's called the psychoidal world. This is an area that's not either material or spiritual. It participates in both. So, you know, there's a borderline between the inner world and the outer world. But I mean, there's a guy named, you know, that I've met him too. His name's Jeffrey Raff, and he really came to Jung through Carlos Castaneda, and because he was so he had so many visions as a young man, similar to Carlos Castaneda had of Don Juan, you know. And so anyway, these have not gone away, and especially I would say in the 15th century, you know, you have this these scholastics, you know, like you know, all these dry monks writing theology, you know, and who hate women, live in monasteries, you know, and denigrate the body and want to have a kind of a strange spiritual experience, which, you know, is not the spiritual experience you would experience in India or the one you'd experience in China or Japan. It's one that rejects the feminine, you know. Now, this was actually very important in the development of consciousness. Yet one of its aspects, and you can't really, if we were to judge all mythic systems by its adherents, it would be a pretty sorry story. I don't really think there are many you know, good stories about adherence to myths, especially when they turn it into dogma, you know. And they what they do is they take this mercurial images, you know, which are supposed to be always ever changing, you know, and we they're supposed to not be, we don't take them from other people, we get them out of ourselves. So they're always changing. And you know, once you've become conscious of one image, the next image is going to respond to the fact that you became conscious of that. So it's evolving. And we'll find this with Anna Marjula. As you go through these dialogues, there's a great evolution taking place. Whereas the person who says, I don't have access to any of that stuff, you know, and so I'm going to take this text that I was given. Remember, it's a written text. Religions, before there was writing, were constantly being informed by the seers who existed in the indigenous group that was informing them of the invisible world. Well, once you get a written text and you say, well, yeah, boom, you know, that's it. You guys all shut up. Anybody who disagrees with it, we're going to take out and burn at the stake, you know. So anyway, that's, I would say, anyway, the one thing I would say is about that whole deal about the Great Mother is that it's just understanding a little bit of where she comes from, because all of this to do with the anima and the Great Mother and the terrible mother and the good mother, and it all has to do with nature and the light of nature, the lumen natura. And here we are, all these men who don't really have access to that except through the feminine world. So let's respect it, you know. I mean, it's, if you want to contact the world of the images, it's the world of emotion that Tim's talking about. It's the world of feeling and intuition. It's not the world of thinking. You know, man is this, you know, Homo sapiens, really? Thinking man? You know, I don't think any woman would name herself Homo sapiens. You know,
Say,
yes.
I've been thinking about this for a while. Maybe this is the time to ask this. It seems as though our culture has a personality type, and see if you agree with this. What I experience, as our sort of American culture is extroverted, sensing,
Or
thinking,
thinking, yeah.
perceiving, or judgmental.
There's no country on earth like the United States of America as far as extroverted thinking. Then Canada is more of an introverted thinking country. I don't want to insult Miles, but and then
Well, thank heavens.
yeah, where Italy is extroverted feeling, and Spain is introverted feeling, and France, the city of lights, is extroverted sensation, and Germany is this wonderful land, of course, recent history accepted, of introverted intuition. You know, I mean, it's well, actually, yeah, it's different than it's the exact opposite of so it's introverted thinking. Okay, I'm sorry. This is why France and Germany, you know, France is the solar world, extroverted, and oh yeah, it is extroverted sensation. So the opposite to that is introverted intuition, which is Germany. So Germany is the lunar world, and France is the. But anyway, yes, every culture has a dominant type. You know, I mean, at least you know you can say it glibly, and then have somebody say you're wrong. You know, but so you know it's just a sort of a generalization. You know, of the Young and C.G. Young speaking talks a lot about this, and you know these Swiss, you know, are all introverted intuitives too. They're Germanic people, you know, or I think they're introverted sensates because you know they create Swiss watches and stuff. But when they come to America, they're just absolutely either repelled. Marie-Louise von Franz was repelled. Emma Young loved it. You know, she was an introverted sensate. So it's a real shock to come to America. And you know, everybody here, you know, one girl from France, or no, from Czechoslovakia, told me the thing she most hates about America is people saying howdy. You know, you know, you go to Norway, and if you were to say howdy to somebody who hadn't been introduced to you, they'd be very offended. You know, you don't talk to me unless I'm introduced to you. You know, so anyway, so anyway, this person that we can jump into the to the Anna Marjula, but I just thought I'd tell you about this one woman. It's just very illustrative of this. This woman who has the you know, the negative mother complex. You know, she is has claustrophobia. Well, why would a woman with a negative mother complex have claustrophobia? Well, I mean, because her fear is being trapped in the negative mother's ensnaring spider webs and never leaving the womb. You know, and so you know, she had a positive animus, you know, and her attitude towards the brother, to the animus, was more of a brotherly attitude, you know, rather than one of a sexual nature. And you know, what her animus, actually her original male figure other than her father was her younger brother, and they would always do things from Alexander Dumas, you know, about all these Count of Monte Cristo, you know, who were imprisoned somewhere and trying to escape and trying to fight an unjust power. Well, the unjust power is the mother, you know, this totalitarian figure who is dominating both of them. She was a real mother who did this, you know. And so anyway, one thing that's interesting that he said, this is Gerhard Adler, that said, if you're a man and you have a relationship with a woman and it's a sisterly relationship, it stresses the human element. So, it has gives man a picture, or woman a picture, of a being who's closer to their ego, who's more friendly to their consciousness, the brother or sister. They're more friendly to our consciousness because it stresses the human element. But then if you are encountering the sexual side of either a woman or a man, depending on what your sex is, this being is not close to your ego, and it's not friendly to your consciousness. So you're dealing somewhat with the non-ego world now, because it's stressing not a human element, but a biological element, which is definitely non-ego. So, I just thought that was a very interesting thing. Does that strike any of you? The difference between a brotherly, sisterly relationship with the opposite sex, and then when you experience the sexual side of the opposite sex, now you're experiencing something that is non-ego. So it's not friendly to the ego, it's not close to the ego, it's far away from the ego, and it's not friendly to consciousness.
And you said that you identify that as being close to nature?
It's more the biological. You're now encountering the biological aspects of your contrasexual gender, and they are completely a mystery to your ego consciousness. Because they're so different. It is so. This is why the other sex seems so mysterious. Where women see the union of the their earth and seek of spirit. So when their image of a sexual union is more of a spiritual, has a spiritual aspect to it. And for the man, he's spirit in search of the earth. So, when he experiences this type of union, he's experiencing it in kind of an earthly, crude way. And so after it's over, he doesn't see it as a spiritual event, And so then the woman is confused because she's seeing it as her earth uniting with spirit, and he's seeing it as this foreign earth that he doesn't really understand its world very well. And so when he's done, he goes back into his other world, and the woman's confused. What happened? So go ahead.
Well, this just relates to a conversation I was having yesterday about this very thing, about the difference between the masculine and feminine experience. So what do you think? I guess I just want to hear you repeat that again. The man embodies the spirit uniting with the earth. And for the woman, that's a spiritual experience because it's
the woman's earth uniting with the spirit.
Yeah.
So for her, the aspect of a sexual union has a different context. Because
the spirit has come into this unity and she feels it.
Yes, that's what she's experiencing. She's experiencing somewhat, at least the way she's seeing it, or the context. And now this is not, this is generalization. So I'm ready to get my head bit off. But it's the earth is experiencing spirit, the rooted earth. And remember, when people deny this and say it's all wrong, what I think they're doing is overvaluing the thinking function. If you overvalue the thinking function, then you say everything to do with feeling, intuition, or sensation is wrong. And I live in the United States of America in the 21st century, and the only thing that matters is dry facts, And I belong to the world of dry facts, and that's who pays my paycheck. So
unless you're a Republican, I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But if you live in all four functions, see, then this is not so alien. It's not.
But getting back to this again, the man experiences that union with a sense of mystery. And it seems like what you're saying is he doesn't really have anything in his brain to connect with that sense of mystery.
Well,
It's,
yeah, he's heaven. He's the living breath of heaven for the woman, and the woman is the living breath of earth for him. So once he's living in this very abstract world, and then he, for a short time, communes with the earthly aspect of the other sex, and then he leaves it. He doesn't experience the same. It's not the context that Earth having spirit visit it would. I mean, it's just a different. Say, I mean, I just think that I don't know if you can wrap your head around that, but I mean, it's just sort of why sometimes women are so confused that a man can just get up and walk away and doesn't seem to have been transformed by the experience sometimes.
yeah, I think part of that might be the difference between the left and the right brain,
Yes.
because the left brain, we have language for what happens in the cognitive realm.
Mhm.
And so the woman can have unity with the spirit and talk about her experience of that transformation. The man has unity with this dark mystery that is the feminine earth force and has no words for it.
Mhm.
It can create an image, it can create an emotion, but when the woman says, well, how is that for you? You just have no words
Well, sometimes you're not, you don't. That's why the woman's asking that question in the first place, is because she's seeing in there a significance that the man doesn't see and is blind to. So she's very confused by the fact that the man is blind to something that she experienced. And she's just looking at him like, what, who are you?
I was gonna say, on the man's part, I guess I would say there is a dismissal of the meaning of the experience due to over rationalization.
Yeah, the thing
Unable to, yeah, like Tim was saying, really kind of unable to describe it. Therefore, a dismissal because, well, if you don't have the rational tools to explain and to kind of convey this really irrational experience, then you just kind of naturally kind of dismiss it in a way and dismiss all the feelings and everything. Yeah.
Well, if you're a flower, let's say you're a flower, and a bee comes, and you experience the wonder of the pollination processes. The bee is bringing you the pollen from the other, and is giving you the seed to create a child. Now, remember too, there's that aspect of it, that the woman is the life bearer, where the man's not the life bearer. So there's another mystery involved in this to the woman. It's not that it isn't, I mean, if it's sex for its own sake, but there's also this aspect of of being the life bearer and the mystery of creating life. Okay, so you're this flower, and the bee comes, and you experience the miracle of conception, and then it just leaves. Where's he going? I mean, that's what I just say, that the man is like a bee. He just goes from flower to flower sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. But anyway, the idea here is it's one thing. And now this is just a couple of things. We don't have too much time, and next time we'll just jump into Anna Marjula. But I think I confused everybody more than anything. But it's just the aspect of the four mysteries of the feminine, and that the man exists outside there, and his only entrance to that is with the anima, although he can have dialogues with the Great Mother as well, but it's just something I'm trying to, I think we want to discuss the Great Mother, the anima, the animus, the shadow, and that was our first experience with it. We'll know more about her later. But anyway, there's also this aspect of the brotherly sister, the human element of experiencing the opposite sex and experiencing the sexual side is what's called the endogamous and the exogamous. I mean, it used to be that you would have cousin marriages. You'd marry within the tribe, and then the exogamous is where you'd go outside the tribe, which is kind of a development in culture where you would, somehow they knew that if they would seek a partner outside of their tribe, that it would be healthier because its genetic material was different. But psychically, that has something with, I'm leaving your family world of your brother and your sister and your mother and your father, and I'm going out here. Now, that is a real heroic journey that you don't get in the world of the brother and sister. So the brother and sister experiences the human element, but the sexual aspect is where you really leave the the participation mystique of the container. You're now really outside of it. So that's what they call the exogamous. And this woman had, and Anna Marjula has a great difficulty as well with the animus because of her heroic attitude. That instead of really the way to the union of opposites is through really surrender. I mean, the only way that you can experience the stone, is to I had this wonderful this is one thing that this Gerhard Adler said, that this woman, he was quoting Jung in Alchemy. He says, purify the body from all superfluities in the fiercest heat of the furnace. What he was meaning is that she needed to, she was being a heroic martyr. But this heroic martyr is not going to ever experience the individuation, because the only way to individuation is through surrender, through humility, through what they call a sacrifice of the heart. And it was so funny because I just read that and I had this dream, and the dream said, only when the inside is purified is the outside really permeable. Well, when I first heard that, I thought, what in the
really
hell?
What is permeable?
Okay, now this is just a dream, a voice I heard in a dream, and it said, only when the inside is purified is the outside really permeable. And I wonder, what in the hell does that mean? I'm trying to figure out, what does that mean? And so, I did this inner dialogue, and it really just said that that only when, and this, I didn't read this at that time. I just read this last night. It says only by purifying the body from all superfluities in the fiercest heat of the furnace is the way to individuation. In other words, you have to dissolve and coagulate. You have to get rid of all fixities and certainties.
That's that last word. Permeated. Is that what you said?
Permeated. See, now this is it came up. I know it came up because every time I start to read something, I find I'm very distracted. So I say a little prayer to the Great Mother. I said, quiet my mind and let it be permeable to the words I'm reading. Let them become part of me so that I can understand your world better and become closer to you, give you a name and a face.
This is really resonating with me. I had a dear friend who was a psychotherapist years ago. We were having a conversation about intimacy. And she said to me, the only person who can really be intimate is one who is willing to be penetrated. And this gets back to part of the difficulty with being a man is you don't have the physical means of being penetrated.
Mhm. You have to be permeable. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, but yet you're right. And you know, Anna Margula is going to say that pretty soon. I mean, it's just amazing that she talks about the mystery of okay, being a vessel. You know, the mystery of the vessel, and then the penetrating aspect of that. Now, let's not get graphic here. I'm not trying to be graphic. I'm saying these are symbolic images, you know, of the penetrating force and the receiving force. Now, this has a little bit to do with um, what Peter Kingsley, you know, says that the way to the shaman's way, or the way of the seer, is to lie down in dark places and die. You know, I mean, the old idea is that you're opening yourself up to the images of the other world. This is the receptive aspect. Now, compare that a little bit with the Trinity, and you know, the God in three persons, and Yahweh, and all this stuff. It's a little, the patriarchal world is a little bit different, but the object of the patriarchal world is action. You know, doing things, the direct approach. You know, and that you could call penetrating. You know, but it's I'm going to take the fortress. You know, whatever it is you're going to do, and that is a somewhat what makes is a blundering way. This is why Parsifal could never find the Grail Castle. You know, I mean, he's taking the direct approach. He's taking the approach of the masculine, which is this direct penetrating approach. Can never find the Grail Castle. The only way he can find the Grail Castle is to drop the reins of the horse and let nature lead him. You know, so you know, this is going to be a very interesting conversation, Tim, that I think we'll have hopefully next time. Is the intimacy. Now, this is what the woman says. And okay, I just wanted to read one quick thing because this is fabulous. Okay, now remember, this one woman had this problem, this neurosis of claustrophobia. You know, she didn't want to be caught in the womb. But listen to what he says about frigidity. Okay, now in when you have a frigidity, you are there is a fear of losing yourself in the sex act, of being annihilated. I mean, if you're going to sit there and allow yourself to be penetrated, to become intimate, it's a jump into the dark. And so when someone has this aspect of frigidity, of the really the fear of the sex act, they're actually have a fear of loss of individuality. You know, I mean, and intimacy is a surrender. I think that if you're going to be intimate with someone, it really is humility, you know, a sacrifice. I'm sacrificing my ego and inviting you to bare your soul to me, and without judgment or comment. I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the best person at this because my social skills are very rudimentary and everything. But you know, I do, Tim. That is a wonderful statement, and we're going to hear how Anna Margula addresses that very situation, because she never could be intimate with any man. She would panic. That meant that she was not willing to jump into the dark, you know. So anyway, well, we'll continue this next time. I hope I didn't bore anybody to tears. Okay.
No, it's
I had a good time.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Greg.
All right. Well, it's fascinating to me, but, you know, don't get me started. Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.